Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. On today's show, ESPN's Mel Kiper Jr. has released his latest mock draft. Who does he have the Steelers taking in round one? It's definitely an interesting answer that we'll talk about at the top of today's show. Then we'll talk about whether the Steelers should consider drafting Drew Allar instead of Ty Simpson this year during the NFL draft. Then we'll get into an under-the-radar 2026 QB target that the Steelers can trade for this offseason that I think would be a pretty decent rehab quarterback option for the Pittsburgh Steelers if they want to pursue him. Now, yesterday, GM Omar Khan did speak to the media. He had a number of different interviews and press conferences and all that different stuff, and we had pretty much a 30-minute video on this channel yesterday breaking down everything that the con artist had to say, everything from Roman Wilson to Nick Herbig to Aaron Rodgers to Will Howard. We broke it all down for you guys with a bunch of clips from his press conferences yesterday. If you want to check out that video, I'll put the chip to that one in the top right if you guys want to catch up on what Omar had to say yesterday. And of course, make sure you guys click that subscribe button for all of our NFL Combine coverage this week. We are getting, obviously, formal interviews. They're already coming in for linebackers and defensive linemen today. We're going to keep you guys updated on all the formal interviews and all the guys that the Steelers are meeting with formally at the NFL Combine, because that particularly matters for the first-round selection. The Steelers very rarely take a first-round player that they don't formally meet with at the Combine. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button for all our latest Combine updates from Indianapolis. All right, so now let's get into Mel Kiper Jr.'s 2.0 mock draft, where he has the Steelers taking Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson, who has certainly been linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers in many of the recent mock drafts around the league. We talked about it earlier this week, and now Mel adds his name to the list of NFL draft analysts that believe Simpson could be on his way to Pittsburgh. This is what Mel had to say about why he has Simpson going to the Steel City. The Steelers have to think about the QB position with a longer view lens. They could bring back Aaron Rodgers or opt for another veteran stopgap to keep them in contention next season, but even if they go that route, they should still address their future at the position. Simpson has just 15 starts to his name, and his 2025 season was uneven, but his game has a lot of promise. He navigates the pocket well and threw 28 touchdown passes to just 5 interceptions last season. Pittsburgh could let him learn behind a veteran for a little while before turning the offense over to him. Now, personally, guys, I wouldn't be completely devastated if the Pittsburgh Steelers end up drafting Ty Simpson. I know a lot of my fellow Steelers fans out there, they do not want the Steelers to suspend their first-round draft selection on Ty Simpson because you guys know what I like to say, the last impression is the lasting impression, and frankly, Ty Simpson didn't finish his 2025 season at Alabama all that great. Now, he did deal with some injuries. He had some stomach lining issues as well that he claims he went through that certainly affected the way that, he played at the end of his 2025 campaign. But I think Ty Simpson, you could look at it as somebody that, doesn't have a ton of college game experience, but you can also look at the fact that he played in a pro-style offense that asked him to go under center a lot and throw over the middle of the field a lot, and he was very proficient at doing both of those things. And that's a skill set that sometimes takes quarterbacks that, are in heavy shotgun or heavy pistol formation offenses a couple years to learn at the NFL level. Ty Simpson, even though he's got limited college experience, I think is going to be able to operate an under center NFL offense on day one. I also think he's got really fast mental processing. He can go through a full field progression read extremely quickly. That's something that head coach Mike McCarthy is really going to like, in my opinion. He's got better arm strength than he gets credit for. I don't think it's a bazooka of an arm, but certainly good enough to get the job done. He can throw with anticipation. He has a beautiful touch over the middle of the field, layering that football over linebackers and in front of safeties. And he is a plus athlete. He was a dual threat quarterback. He was a 5-star dual threat coming out of high school. So this guy can move around. He's got some nice pocket navigation and out of structure playmaking. Now, he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's under 210 pounds at 6'2". It's not the smallest guy in the world, but certainly not the biggest guy in the world either. He does have limited college game experience, and, there's a question on, how durable he is at that size. He dealt with multiple injuries towards the end of last season, and obviously the NFL season is longer than the college football season. So is this guy really somebody that can stay healthy? I do have a round one grade on Ty Simpson. I think that somebody, especially in the Shanahan or McVay families there of offenses, is really going to like his ability to go under center, go through a full field progression read, the precision that he plays with. And, when he was healthy, this guy was the best college football quarterback last year you're including Fernando Mendoza, in my opinion. But however, if you go round one quarterback, I think that Omar Khan has to get busy during free agency and during the trade period of the offseason, and he has to land a big name wide receiver to pair with DK Metcalf, because if you're going to forego getting a legitimate, top flight wide receiver prospect in round one this year, in my opinion, you got to get that top flight wide receiver name in free agency or via trade. And if you don't get that player this offseason, during free agency and during that first period of the offseason of player acquisition, then I think Omar Khan absolutely needs to go wide receiver in round one to, solidify the future at that position alongside DK Metcalf. But, just getting away from Ty Simpson here, there's actually an interesting conversation going on right now on Steelers Twitter about what the Steelers should do. Should they consider going out after Ty Simpson in round one, or is it a better decision to go with Drew Allar on day two? Some people are just straight up saying, I'd rather have Drew Allar over Ty Simpson, period, not only, with the round value attached to it. And I think Drew Allar is a very interesting prospect, guys. I think he's probably going to end up as my QB3 in this draft class. And Allar is still relatively young, just 22 years old next season. He's currently 21, but he turns 22 in March. And, this guy's huge, 6'5", 235 pounds. He's a pretty decent playmaker and athlete for that size as well. He's not Josh Allen or anything like that, but he can certainly move around a little bit. He is coming off a broken ankle, however, in his final season there at Penn State. And right now he's currently ranked as the 109th overall prospect on the consensus big board, which would project him as an early round 4 pick. Now, I think that Allar is that quote-unquote AFC North QB, kind of that prototypical big, strong arm type of guy. And Omar Khan, the Steelers GM, said yesterday during his press conference at the Combine that they're looking for that quote-unquote AFC North quarterback. This is Omar Khan talking about that.
Yeah, so there's several traits, but I'll say we have to find the right quarterback that's going to be an AFC North quarterback. Playing in the AFC North, there's nothing like it. The cold weather, the rivalries, the division, the physicality of the division. So it's got to be a AFC North quarterback.
Now, you might be saying at home, but Jack, what does an AFC North quarterback really look like? Well, really, it's somebody that's built to play in the division of the AFC North where everyone plays outside, everyone plays in cold weather conditions at the end of the season, and, can take a beating, okay? Because this is a super physical division, obviously, and you got to be really tough. And, the Steelers, I would assume, probably really prefer a big-bodied dude to be their next franchise quarterback, like Big Ben Roethlisberger was, somebody with a strong arm that can cut through the conditions and the wind and the snow and the rain, somebody with big hands that can grip the football when the football is wet, and somebody that's also a dog competitor, somebody that's going to go out there, and if he takes a big hit, he's going to like it. He's going to have kind of that sick mentality to him where he loves the competitive aspect of playing football. And I would say that describes Drew Allar to a T. I love his competitive toughness. Obviously he's really big. He's actually pretty close to Big Ben Roethlisberger's size, and obviously he's got an incredible arm with incredible velocity that he can put on all of his footballs. Now, I would say Will Howard also fits that description. Obviously, he's a big-bodied dude with good arm strength. I wouldn't say it's as good as Drew Allar's. The arm talent and the arm elasticity and the playmaking is certainly not as good as Drew Allar's, in my opinion. But, Will is certainly somebody that, is a dog competitor, national champion, big-bodied guy that, theoretically could play in the AFC North as a starting quarterback. And, you look at Drew Allar's profile, my scouting report on him, he's actually a very underrated mental processor. He can go through a full field progression read very quickly, specifically Y cross. Like, he is a Y cross master on that Penn State film. And honestly, I don't love Penn State's offense. Like, it's a lot of hank and it's a lot of stop routes. And there honestly wasn't as much wide receiver help around Drew Allar as I would have thought, looking at Penn State's offense. Like, they just weren't really winning on the perimeter a whole lot for him. He had to rely on Tyler Warren quite a bit over the middle of the field in 2024, but obviously he's got the size, he's got incredible arm talent. Those are the things that everybody knows about him, but he's also got pretty decent pocket presence. He knows, and he's got a natural feel for the game. He knows where rushers are coming from, and he can evade pressure. And, he obviously, when he pairs that with that awesome arm talent, he can make some crazy throws out of structure. They just don't see many people, capable of making. intriguing. But the downsides to Drew Allar, definitely there's a lot of inconsistency to his game, to his accuracy, and specifically that's brought on by his pocket footwork. When he doesn't have his footwork and his base lined up, like, it can get pretty ugly with the accuracy, and then he can make some poor decisions with the football as well, putting the ball in harm's way. It's not as bad as like Will Levis, for example, coming out of Kentucky a few years ago, but certainly something to keep your eye on in terms of the cons when it comes to Drew Allar, not to mention he's coming off that ankle injury. You wonder how that's going to affect the way he can move moving forward. But I would say, at the top end of the ceiling for Drew Allar, he's got a lot of shades of Big Ben Roethlisberger in his game. And like, when I watch Drew Allar, he doesn't have the quickest feet in the world. He's not very fast, kind of like Big Ben Roethlisberger was never like a fast athlete, but he was somebody that was very well known for his improvisational ability, his ability to maneuver the pocket and evade pressure. And he was a magician back there. And I get a very similar vibe from Drew Allar when I watch his film. Now, obviously, he's got a long way to go before he hits that ceiling of a Big Ben Roethlisberger type of quarterback. He's got to get more consistent with his accuracy, his footwork, all that different stuff. But with that being said, I do think that Allar does have a ways to go, but he also has a very high upside where he could be a star-level quarterback in the National Football League if he can take the proper steps. And because he's only 22 years old, he still has all the time in the world to be able to make those steps at the NFL level, especially if you pair him up with a guy like Mike McCarthy, who's known for quarterback development. And, I think the good news when it comes to Drew Allar, if the Steelers end up taking him, is that he wouldn't likely have to play year one. It sounds like Aaron Rodgers is likely going to be coming back for another season here in Pittsburgh. And, Jordan Love, Zach Wilson, Will Howard, they've all praised Aaron Rodgers' ability to mentor young quarterbacks. And I can definitely get behind a year of Aaron Rodgers as someone who I believe, as you guys know, is the best short-term option for this team, gives this team the best chance to compete right now with the players you have on the roster, but then you give a year to Drew Allar to learn from one of the greatest of all time underneath one of the best QB developing head coaches of all time in Mike McCarthy, and I think Allar would have one hell of a shot to become a franchise-level quarterback here with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he wouldn't cost as much as Ty Simpson. I think you could probably get Drew Allar on day two, whether that be with your second-round selection or one of your third-round picks. I think that this is something that's very realistic for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you don't have to spend your first-round pick in order to get him in your building. So pick your quarterback for me down there in the comment section. Would you prefer the Mel Kiper Jr. plan of Ty Simpson in round one, or would you rather go Drew Allar in round two? Give me TS if you'd go with Simpson in round one, or DA for Drew Allar in round two. This will be the pinned comment on today's show, so in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Rag & Bone. While I tell you about our sponsor today, let me know which quarterback you'd rather take in which round. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's pretty cold here in our studio here at Chat Sports, and I'm absolutely obsessed with this brand new denim shirt that I got from our brand new sponsor here on Steelers Talk, which is Rag & Bone. Rag & Bone Infuse offers a range of fits tailored for any style and occasion, from slim and straight to athletic and relaxed. Infused denim is a wardrobe staple that pairs perfectly with any outfit in whatever fit you prefer. For a limited time, our listeners get 20% off their entire order with code CHAT at rag-bone.com. I was completely blown away the first time I tried on my Rag & Bone shirt and jeans because of how broken in they felt right away and how high quality the materials were. I used to have to choose between jeans that looked great and ones that actually lasted, but with Rag & Bone, I finally get the best of both worlds. Rag & Bone Infused Denim is crafted with a proprietary 8-step overdye process, and it gives each piece a rich, dimensional color that gets better with every wash. And not only do they look great, guys, but Rag & Bone makes jeans that are built to last, that actually get more comfortable the more that you wear them. It's time to upgrade your denim with Rag & Bone today. For a limited time only, our listeners can get 20% off their entire order with code CHAT at rag-bone.com. That's 20% off at rag-bone.com with promo code CHAT. When they ask where you heard about them, please support our show and tell them that we sent you. And a big thank you to Rag & Bone for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. Now let's say the Pittsburgh Steelers don't want to spend any of their draft picks on a quarterback this year and would rather spend a later round draft pick to get a veteran QB that could maybe be a rehab option. And we'll talk about Will Levis here because I think he was a very similar caliber of prospect to Drew Allar coming out of Kentucky. And I think he was put in a really bad situation there with the Tennessee Titans. And the reason why I think Will Levis is an interesting rehab quarterback type of option for the Pittsburgh Steelers is because I look at what what the successful rehab quarterbacks in this league look like. Guys like Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, who just won a Super Bowl, Daniel Jones, all these guys. What do they all have in common, guys? They were all talented, highly touted prospects coming out of school that were drafted highly, either in the first or second round, and they go to bad situations to start their NFL careers. Baker Mayfield obviously goes to Cleveland, the worst of all situations, in my opinion anyway. Then you got Sam Darnold going to the Jets, maybe the other worst situation you could go to. And then, of course, Daniel Jones to the G-Men, another terrible situation, and they don't look good, right? And then they go somewhere else, and they go with a decent play caller and with some decent weapons and some decent protection, and poof, they're back to being, to hitting their upside and hitting what they could have been and why they were drafted as highly as they did, and they were. But Tennessee, guys, with the Titans, like, as you know, if you watched any Cam Ward last year, this is the king of bad situations in the National Football League as we speak right now. The offensive line play is terrible. They don't have enough receiving weapons for them. They don't have much of a run game. The defense is perennially terrible as well. And Brian Callahan was one of the worst head coaches in the league the last several years. And right now, a lot of people are looking at Cam Ward as somebody that is the future of that organization. And I think, with Robert Saleh and Brian Dable going into Tennessee, I think Cam Ward does have a bright future. But like Will Levis was in pretty much the same exact situation as Cam Ward was in last year, and he played better, you could argue, than Cam Ward. And like when people talk about Will Levis, they're like, this guy sucks, he can't play, absolute bust, you shouldn't even give him a chance, can never be a starter. And with Cam Ward, people are like, man, this guy's the future of the Tennessee Titans. When Levis, it wasn't very good EPA, but it was better than what Cam Ward's was last year. His completion percentage over expected was almost 10 points higher than Cam Ward's was. He had a yard more per attempt. He had a point higher in the big-time throw percentage department, and his touchdown percentage was a lot higher, right? So I think Will Levis is somebody that might be an underrated quarterback that's available out there via trade. And you guys got to remember, too, Will Levis and Malik Willis actually were in an open QB competition just a couple of years ago. Who won that competition? It was Will Levis. And right now, Malik Willis, according to Jordan Schultz, is projected to get $30 million per season. And the Steelers could get the guy that beat him out in an open competition just a couple years ago for like a 5th or a 6th round draft pick. That sounds like it could be a potential value for the Pittsburgh Steelers to me. Now, something that I think just absolutely puts this point to a T here of why Will Levis was in just a terrible situation there with the Tennessee Titans is to look at his pressure numbers and his average time to throw numbers, because he was pressured at a top 10 clip in the NFL among starting quarterbacks that year, but he was also the 4th fastest in terms of average time to throw. So that means he was under pressure a lot, even though he was getting the ball out of his hands very, very quickly. And when you look at the pressure differential, when you take a look and you subtract the average time to throw ranking minus where the pressure ranking was, it's negative 30. Okay, that is the lowest in the NFL by 11. The next lowest for that season in 2024 was Gardner Minshew with the Raiders at negative 19. So not only was Will Levis under pressure a lot, but he was under pressure extremely quickly because that was the worst offensive line in the National Football League. And that is just not a situation that any quarterback can have success with, guys, let alone somebody in their first full year of starting with Brian Callahan, who's one of the most milquetoast offensive minds in the National Football League, calling his plays. And despite the fact that he was under constant pressure, despite the fact that he had to get rid of the ball extremely quickly, that doesn't mean that he was just a check down Charlie, guys. He had the 11th highest average depth of target that season. So he was processing defenses quickly. He was getting the ball out of his hands downfield quickly. He wasn't just doing screens, and he wasn't just doing these little dump-off passes. All right, this is somebody that was reading defenses pre-snap, getting the ball out of his hands quickly, and getting the ball down the field to give his guys a chance to make a play on the football. And when I take a look at Will Levis's film from 2 seasons ago, obviously he didn't play last year. He had shoulder surgery before the year and didn't play at all. But he's got really good size. He still has incredible competitive toughness, and he's a plus athlete. He's got incredible arm talent with a super quick release. He might have the quickest release in the NFL right now. And I think that he, kind of like Drew Allar, is a very underrated mental processor. He can go through pre-snap and post-snap reads very, very quickly. Now, some of the inconsistencies are very similar to Drew Allar's as well. The accuracy, right? The accuracy's always been a bugaboo of Will Levis going back to school. Also decision-making, had a lot of turnover-worthy plays at Kentucky. That continued at Tennessee. That's something he's going to have to clean up. But then also, the pocket presence has always been something that I don't love with Will Levis. I've always thought that he's a better athlete than sometimes he uses. Like, there's always opportunities for him to extend a play or use his legs, and he likes to stay in the pocket, and that can be a frustrating part of his game. But I do think that he's a talented quarterback with incredible arm talent and great toughness. And, I think that if he can get with the right quarterback coach, with the right situation, with the right supporting cast, this is somebody that could be that next Sam Darnold, that could be that next Baker Mayfield, that next Daniel Jones, and be that next success story as a highly taken quarterback that's got really good arm talent. That could become a franchise quarterback. Now, he's going to be coming off a shoulder surgery. Now, the positive end to that is like, okay, maybe the accuracy and consistency won't be as bad because now the shoulder is fixed. But then the negative aspect of that is, well, you're coming off a shoulder surgery. Is that going to be an issue in terms of re-injury moving forward? So, I'm not here to say that Will Levis comes with zero risk, and I don't think I would want to trade for him to be our starting quarterback next year. But how about we do the Drew Allar, Ty Simpson plan here, where you bring in a Will Levis to learn from Aaron Rodgers for a year, very similar, style quarterbacks with quick releases and, can mentally process a defense. I think Levis could really, really learn a thing or two from Aaron Rodgers, learning under him for a year, and then boom, you've got your potential long-term answer at the quarterback position, somebody with a rocket arm, somebody with a lot of big playability, somebody with a quick release, on somebody that's got the competitive toughness that can rally the troops in the Steelers locker room. I think that, Will Levis, could potentially be built to be the future franchise quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers if they end up trading for him. Also, he's going to be super cheap to acquire this offseason, all right? Obviously, he's been out of the zeitgeist here for a while because he had that shoulder surgery last year, didn't play at all in 2025, and I think the Titans are just going to want to get an extra draft pick for him. So I think you could maybe even get him for like a 6th-round draft choice. The Steelers have 2 6th-round picks this year. You trade one of them for Will Levis. You don't have to spend a higher draft pick on a guy like Ty Simpson or Drew Allar, and you still get somebody that's still relatively young, has a lot of talent to him, and can learn a thing or two from Aaron Rodgers before eventually taking the reins as the next starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. What do you guys think of this potential deal here? Would you trade a 6th-round pick for Will Levis? Is it worth the risk, or would you rather draft a quarterback in the NFL draft this year? Type A if you would accept this trade, or D if you would decline it. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Rumors, brought to you here by Chat Sports. Later today, we're going to have more coverage from everything that we hear from the Combine. We'll have our list of linebackers and defensive linemen that the Steelers formally meet with at the Combine. We'll have a bunch of other stuff coming out from Indianapolis later today, guys. So make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already.